We have been talking about the support for Kamala Harris, particularly pointing out the Republican support for Kamala Harris. Joe Walsh was at the Democratic National Convention, our former Tea Party Illinois Congressman. Adam Kinzinger was at the DNC talking about Kamala Harris. Liz Cheney has endorsed Kamala Harris. Her father, Dick Cheney, quite possibly the most jaw-dropping endorsement of Kamala Harris. But these are certainly not the only Republicans who see a danger in this election that sort of supersedes party politics. Former Secretary of Transportation and Illinois Congressman Ray LaHood is part of a group of former Republican members of Congress for Harris and joins us now to talk about this. Ray, welcome to the broadcast. How are you?
I'm good, Joan. Thank you for including me in your program.
Oh, I'm happy you're here. So tell me about your thought process in making this very, very monumental decision.
Well, Joan, when Trump ran the first time against my friend Vice President Biden, I supported Vice President Biden mainly because he was my friend. I worked with him when I was Secretary of Transportation in the Obama administration. And I mean, he is a friend. We traveled all over the country together promoting transportation programs and projects. And then when it was clear that Trump was going to be the nominee, I came out very strongly again for Joe Biden because really I think he's done an extraordinary job, and not least of which $1 trillion transportation bill, which Trump talked about for 4 years and never did one damn thing. Biden's in there 1 year. He gets a bipartisan bill. He gets 17 Republicans in the Senate to support it and 7 in the House, and he did a lot of other bipartisan legislation. When he decided to drop out, it became clear that Vice President Harris was going to be the nominee, and Trump is just not fit to be president, Joan, and we all know what the reasons are. So it's easy for me, and I'm still a Republican. I voted in the Republican primary in March in my hometown of Peoria, Illinois, where my wife and I live. And I'm proud of my son, Darren, who's a congressman from the 16th District. He and I are on opposite sides of this.
Well, I was going to get around to that, but you brought it up. I would love to know about what are the discussions the two of you have had.
Well, Darren knew very clearly that I would never support Trump, and he knew very clearly that Biden and I were friends, and he knows my disdain and dislike for Trump, and so he didn't try and convince me otherwise, and I've never tried to convince him. He represents the 16th Congressional District, which is a very conservative Republican district in Illinois. His district goes from Peoria to Rockford to the western suburbs, and it's a conservative district, and he's representing his constituents very well. I intend to vote early when early voting begins in Peoria, and I will be voting for Vice President Harris.
Obviously, Darren does represent a very conservative district, and as we've seen in 2020, a lot of people who, even if they didn't come out against Trump, a lot of Republicans were primaried by people who were farther right than they were, and a lot of those primary challenges were successful. So it's
you know, Joan, in Southern Illinois, Darren Bailey, who ran for governor against Pritzker, ran against Mike Boss. Mike Boss is a very conservative Republican in Southern Illinois. Trump supported him, and Mike won that election. I'm glad that he did. He's been a good conservative Republican congressman. So, I mean, that's one example where, even though Trump endorsed Bailey for governor, he certainly was supporting Boss. So I'm glad Mike prevailed in Illinois. But I take your point. Look, Trump has a has a stranglehold on his own party. The Republican Party, as I once knew it, the Republican Party of Bob Michael, Ronald Reagan, George Bush, George W. Bush, Bob Dole, on and on and on, does not exist, Joan.
It doesn't,
the Republican Party the Republican Party that I served in for 14 years in Illinois does not exist. I think once Trump is defeated in November, we'll get back to people like Nikki Haley and Jeb Bush and some other prominent Republicans, maybe Chris Christie, and we got a very strong bench. We need to get Trump out of the way, and when we get back to that very strong bench, the American people will have choices to make from our very strong Republican bench.
But, Ray, I've talked to people who say that the Republican Party is so changed now. I mean, Joe Walsh and I have fairly regular conversations, and while he is out there stumping for Kamala Harris and talking to Republicans, he has said to me that he thinks the Republican Party has been so altered that neither he nor I will live long enough to see it resemble the Republican Party of old. You seem to think that if Trump loses, or perhaps we should say when Trump loses this next election, that the Republican Party will return to the party that you and I knew, which, still wants good things for people in the country, just has different ideas of how we get there. Why do you have faith that even once Trump is gone, somehow the Republican Party will right itself when it seems to have really absorbed all the MAGA ideas? It seems to be the core of the Republican Party is MAGA now.
Yeah, Joan, I think this. I think we're not going back to the past. But when Trump is gone, there's, as I said, there are some very, very strong Republicans who tried to challenge Trump this time around, and certainly challenged him the first time he ran. 16 very substantial Republicans. You have people like Marco Rubio from Florida. You have people, I mentioned some others, and very, very strong, both men and women. And they'll have strong agendas for the idea of fiscal responsibility, which does not exist in Washington, D.C. today. You'll have people who will be responsible for fixing our broken immigration system. You'll have people that are willing to stand up against Putin, stand up against Xi, and not kowtow.
Well, that's the old Republican Party that hated communism and hated dictators and wanted small government and wanted government out of our lives. It's like the current Republican Party is some sort of weird, distorted mirror image of that. I mean, and talk about the border. One of the most conservative people at the federal level, Jim Langford from Oklahoma, negotiated border reform, and Donald Trump killed it with a few phone calls.
Yeah, and the point is, Joan, when Trump is gone, Langford will rise up, and other Republicans will rise up. They'll step in the breach, and they'll fill the breach, and they'll fill it with good ideas and good leadership, and they'll make a difference and give people an opportunity to vote for candidates from both parties, not just one party, but both parties. I'm completely convinced of it, Joan. I really am. I'm not giving up on the Republican Party. I'm not turning Democratic. I'm not. What I'm saying is, and there's a lot of people like me who will be there ready to support a very, very strong Republican bench when Trump is gone.
Ray, what kind of reaction have you gotten from this stance that you're taking, that at the very least in this particular election, you think Harris is the better choice over Trump? What are people saying to you? Do they understand it? Do they give you grief?
It's mixed, Joan, as you would expect. I was known as a pretty strong Republican, following on my mentor Bob Michael and succeeding him, and people that supported me during my time in Congress. Some are disappointed, but some are also believe that what I just said earlier will happen and are not Trump supporters. Many of them will not vote for president because they can't support Trump, but they also can't support Harris. But be that as it may, it's been mixed, and but I understand.
Have you taken a lot of grief for this? Do people think that you're being a traitor?
No, not really, but because people know that I've led a bipartisan career. I served as a Republican in President Obama's campaign in his administration, and when I was in Congress, I was known as a bipartisan leader in the House, and so people understand that I make up my own mind. But I'm a very proud Republican in Peoria, Illinois, and I'm not leaving the Republican Party. I want to be around to rebuild the party when Trump is gone. We need a lot of people to do that.
Joe Walsh thinks the only way that the Republican Party of old can be reconstituted is as a new party with a new name that establishes itself with candidates and money, and not some sort of third-party effort that drops into an election a few weeks before, but rather an actual effort to build something new. What do you think?
What I hope is that people like Joe Walsh and Adam Kinzinger and Liz Cheney will step up and help those of us that are still Republicans, as they are, and rebuild the Republican Party. That's my hope. I think there's a lot of people who don't like Trump, who won't vote for Trump. They won't vote for Harris, but they won't vote for Trump, and will be standing at the ready to rebuild the Republican Party, and I'll be there with them.
And does that mean working with the current structure or creating something new?
Well, it could end up being a hybrid. I mean, it depends on how many people are willing to step up. If the names that I mentioned, Kinzinger, Cheney, Walsh, and others are willing to hang in there until after this election, I think we can rebuild the party
from the inside, from what exists right now. Even though Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger have been so completely, they weren't just rebuked. I mean, Liz Cheney was actually kicked out of her state Republican Party. That seems doesn't seem like an organization that would say, "Oh well, Trump's gone now. Liz, come on back in. We really always loved you."
Well, I'm talking about building a national party with Nikki Haley, with Chris Christie, with people like Jeb Bush and some other Republican governors that are currently serving that have to hold their nose when Trump's around, and so we're going to count on those folks.
Mm-hmm. What do you think the timetable is? Is this, as Joe Walsh said, are he and I going to be alive to see the Republican Party look like it once did? And and you dated yourself too, Ray, when you said that you worked on a bipartisan basis. When was the last time that was appreciated?
Well, as I mentioned early in our conversation here, Joan, President Biden was able to pass a $1 trillion transportation bill with 17 Republicans. Jim Langford, the senator from Oklahoma, was able to work with Democrats and other Republicans to fashion an immigration bill that I believe will really be a hallmark once Trump is gone next year. Those are the kind of things. Those are the kind of people that are going to step up, solve the problems, and rebuild the party.
Ray LaHood, you have said publicly that you are a former Republican at this moment in time who supports Kamala Harris in this upcoming election. Are you actively campaigning for her?
Well, that's why I'm on your show, Joan, because the Republicans that are involved with the Harris campaign were asked to get out there and speak up. And that's what I'm doing, and will continue to do whenever I'm asked to do it. But I'm really not a former. I'm a former Republican congressman, but I'm not a former Republican.
Yes,
I'm still a
you're
Republican.
right. Thank you for that clarification. I misspoke.
Yep.
And you do realize, Ray, that this interview you're kind of preaching to the choir here.
Okay.
What about going on conservative radio with this message? Will they have you?
I told the Harris people, and I told others, I'll go wherever you want me to go. I'm happy to speak publicly on the radio, on television, before any group or any news outlet.
You're a brave man. You're a brave man, Ray LaHood.
Well,
so
I don't know about that, Joan.
Where are you going to be taking the Harris message after today?
Wherever they want me to take it. I'm waiting for my invitation.
You'll go wherever you're directed to go?
That's right.
I love a man like that, Ray.
Yeah, of course.
Those are important qualities.
Right.
I really thank you for talking with us.
Joan, thank you. It's great to be on your show, and I hope we can do it again as we get closer to the election.
Hey,
if you're looking for a Republic,
anytime, because I really feel, there's some people who have an almost religious fervor when it comes to Trump. Literally, the man can say or do nothing wrong. But there are other folks who I think say they're going to vote for Trump because they don't. Honestly, they haven't spent the time like you have and I have. They don't really know all the facts. You hear people saying, well, he was really good for the economy, or he sent me a check. That's my favorite one. He sent me a check. And if I vote him in again, maybe I'll get another check.
Joan, here's what I say to people who my friends say this. He was great for the stock market. He was great for the economy. And I said, if that's all you care about, then go ahead and vote for Trump. I care a lot about other things, like immigration reform, like fiscal responsibility, like our standing in the world community. I am not for somebody who's going to kowtow to Putin, who's going to allow Putin to invade Ukraine. I'm not for Xi the way that Trump is. We need to have a standing in the world that reflects our values of democracy. Trump does not represent that. If all you care about your stocks, then maybe he's your man. I care a lot about other things.
Well, you've got another bit of information as of today, Ray, because the S&P and the Dow have hit today the highest levels in history. That was today. Highest levels in history.
Thanks, Jerome Powell.
Yeah, really. There's a hate-love relationship if I've ever seen one.
I'm sure Trump will fire him if he gets elected. I'm sure he'll fire him on day one for what he did, lowering interest rates. Yeah. Well, according to Project 2025, he's pretty much going to fire everybody, Ray. He's even going to get rid of the long-standing career civil servants, so that nobody stands in his way to accomplishing whatever goal he sets out. A mass deportation, which he keeps talking about. What's that going to look like? Ray, if he gets reelected, we're going to live in a country that I don't think either you or I are going to recognize. I agree. That's why we need to vote for Harris.
Yeah. Yes, indeedy. Yes, indeedy. You heard it here. Campaign commercial. Ray LaHood, former Republican congressman, current hopeful Republican that his party will return to some kind of sanity. Ray, thanks so much for being here.
Joan,
really nice.
Thank you so much. Hope we can do it
anytime
again.
you want to come back, just give me a yell, okay?
Okay, we'll do it. Thank you.
And we can both sit down with Darren and find out what's going on with him, okay?
Okay.
Thanks, Ray.